Can you bring a home back from the dead, then make a TV show out of it? Welcome to the Orlando Real Estate Lifestyle, where we explore the intersection of Orlando real estate and your best life. I'm your host, Phil Kruse, here to help you make the most out of your journey in the city beautiful. Today, I'll be interviewing someone who I define, anyway, as a local legend, Peter Duke. And he goes by Duke. Duke, how are you today, man?
I'm doing well, Phil. Thanks for that intro.
Yeah, no problem. And so I'm so happy that you're on my podcast. Guys, Duke is a local legend, I say, because he was one of the founding members of a program called Zombie Home or Zombie House Flippers. It's on A&E. I believe it's still on A&E. And then he
Mhm.
branched off from there and started a company called Hourglass Homes, which we'll get into. Lots of homes that he built in the Hourglass district, and you may have toured or maybe you own one. Um, so again, Duke, thank you for being here. And before we get started, I'd like to point out to the listener out there that I am a real estate agent, and one of my main lead sources are people like you listening to this podcast. When it's your time to make a real estate decision, or you have a family member or a friend who's asking a real estate question, point them to me. My contact information is in the description of this podcast, and you can find me everywhere on social media at _ Phil Kruse. Now that's Kruse with a K, or just Google me, Phil Kruse, Kruse. Add the word real estate on there. You'll find me. Now, back to my guest, Duke. Duke, you are an entrepreneur at the core. One of the main reasons I gravitated towards you and kind of pursued you, frankly, to be a friend and hopefully I do, and not hopefully, I do view you as a mentor. And one of the main reasons that I've done that is because of your entrepreneurial spirit. And doing a little bit of research about you, I know a lot about you from our conversations over the years, but doing a little research about you, I didn't realize how deep your entrepreneurial roots go. For example, in your bio on Zombie House Flippers, it mentions that you even started a car stereo business in high school,
Mhm.
which is so cool. And that you've had a mantra about basically not wanting to work for anyone all the way back when you were 18. So if you could you explain kind of your mindset and your entrepreneurial journey, starting from back when you were a very young man to where you are today?
Yeah, there is quite a storied history there. Let me kick it off by saying I'm no way, shape, or form a legend. Legends can be told about those who are no longer with us.
That's
So
fair.
one day someone can discern whether I meet that qualification or not. But for now, I'm just a humble hustler trying to find his way in life. Um, and it seems like there's a common stripe that runs through many real estate people, and that's that entrepreneurial spirit that you mentioned. People that want to sort of like be in charge of their own job or their own potential and their own, employ their capabilities in the way they think is best. And I always felt that there was a way to just do better for yourself than you could working for someone else. So I had made that promise to myself when I was in my teens. I said, when I turn 18, which seemed like a long ways away when I said this at 13 or 14, um, I'm never going to work for anyone else again. At the time I was like washing dishes at a restaurant and had gotten promoted to being a busboy. I think I eventually was like serving at a number of restaurants. And my last job working for someone else was I was serving at a retirement home called Pinecrest Place in Largo, Florida.
Nice.
And my little budding car stereo business that you mentioned, I would like sell stuff to people at school and install it and order it, from a wholesaler and stuff that I discovered. Um, that kind of carried me through. And when I was turned 18, I was just doing that. I never worked for anyone else again until I came on the TV show. That was the next paycheck that I drew.
That's
So
crazy. So it's fair to say that you've never had a boss once you left that serving gig at the retirement community. Is that fair to say?
yeah, I mean, there's been people I've got responsibilities to, like we all
Right.
do, but yeah, I wouldn't call them a boss. The Yeah, that all ended with the restaurant times. And I have a
Yeah.
respect for everyone who has worked their way up and for everyone that's at every stage of working. Having been, in that place and having my fingers bleed from washing dishes and stuff, Um, like I appreciate everyone that does all the work, that pulls the weeds, that cuts the grass, that serves us. Like all those people are working very hard, and there should be great appreciation given for the role they fulfill.
Well,
Absolutely.
I love the way you felt the need to put that in. It's just a testament to who you are as a person, and one of the many reasons that I feel like we have a similar energy, and that I'm drawn to really everybody who's like you. That you mentioned humble hustler. Clearly, you just tied a bow around that humble with all your
Mm.
accomplishments. You're right away wanting to give credit to the hard workers out there that are trying to work their way up from the bottom. And shout out to all those servers out there. I started as a server in college as well, one of my first jobs, and I know how tough and stressful that can be. Um,
Yeah.
but moving
Just
on, dude.
just
Oh, go
briefly
ahead,
before we move on,
please.
I'm gonna mention something else on that thread. I remember I used to have a business card, and on the back I had a few little pithy sayings that I'd borrowed, and one of those was from Oscar Wilde, the poet, and he had said, "The true measure of a man is how he treats someone who can do him absolutely no good."
Yep.
And it's just kind of reflecting on that, like, obviously we're all nice and cordial to the people we're doing deals with and the people we need something from, but how does that person treat a barista, or just someone that's like way under them, hey, you're blowing the leaves off of my driveway or whatever. Like, if they're an asshole to those people, it really is very telling of their character. So, look at those around you, because I've seen people at all stations of life, and I watch how they treat those that are, sort of, beneath them in the social hierarchy, and that's very telling of character. So, um, I'm happy to say that I always have maintained a healthy respect for people that are working their way through those different stations.
I mean,
Anyways.
I couldn't agree with you more. An example that comes to mind
Mm,
for me, just to accentuate your point, is, when I leave the mentoring that I do every Friday, which is in Paramore, right on
mm,
Paramore Ave, you're generally not considered the greatest neighborhood.
yes.
I make it a point to make eye contact, smile, and say hi to every person I bump into on the street, whether they're appear homeless, whether they appear to be high on drugs, or whether they're somebody that I don't encounter on a daily basis that makes you feel different. You push that down and say, no, this is a person. I'm going to treat them with love and respect, and that's how society should function. Um,
Yeah.
so but to focus back onto you and your entrepreneurial path, you
Mm,
bought your first rehab home, home to be rehabilitated in
yeah.
about 2003. Of course,
Yes.
it's before the real estate crash of 2008.
Hmm.
What inspired you to do that?
Well, you really want to know. See, I figure not too many people are going to delve into this podcast and really hear the true story of how I got into real estate. So I'm going to go ahead and spill the beans here.
Let's
And
do
plus,
it.
I have no secrets. I wear my heart on my sleeve. So what it was at the time I was doing auto security, and I had gotten to sort of a plateau in that. I'm putting in alarms. I had a business ad in the yellow pages and everything at the time, an employee or two. So I would go out mobile rather than having a storefront and install auto security systems for people. And this was not bad. I mean, there were days I'd make a net $1,000, So for a guy with no college education, well, a 2-year degree, I should say, this was pretty good. But I knew it was a plateau, and I can only work as hard as I can work. And if I took vacation, I was no longer getting paid. So, there was a cost there. So I was reflecting on a buddy of mine, Phil Boye, who was in real estate, who had been into the car alarm business before with me, had moved on to real estate and was rehabbing homes. So I was having this reflection while I was at Spring Break Nationals. It's like a big car stereo show over in Daytona Beach, and I was like blitzed out of my mind. I was on drugs and stuff like this. And so I'm having like a reflection of my friend's life, and like it's like this trip is like playing out in my head, and I was not jealous, but I was like playing it out. And he had like a life full of vigor, and like it was like very like macho, and he has means and everything. And at the very end, like he had passed away, and that was fine because that's a normal course of life. And like he had a nice, like rubbed oak coffin, and like the leather bound volume of his life is closing, and it's got gilt letters on the spine of the volume. Like this whole thing is going through. I'm like, this is a life of style and distinction, which can be attained by working in a different field than what I'm working in, because I'm
Right.
somewhat limited by this plateau I've reached of doing auto security.
Sure.
Ergo, I should get into real estate. And it's kind of funny. Some people, and I have had drug experiences, which just are bonkers. And that was a great time last weekend. And that was that. But this time I used it for a catalyst. So out of my mind, I put a little asterisk. I'm like, get into real estate. And that was the third weekend in March of 2003. I returned to Orlando with my mental note and started looking for houses and bought my first junky house at 1008 37th Street in Orlando, the corner of Westmoreland and 37th. I bought it in May for $50,000. And I leaned on a friend of mine, Fred Sanchez, who was like kind of flipping houses in like this low tier neighborhood for some advice. He helped me negotiate the purchase and everything. And he helped me buy it. So he was a mentor at that time. I knew nothing about real estate. I knew nothing. I went and bought a contract from Office Depot and came back to like write it for this lady.
Wow.
I started going to the Home Depot, like how to tile class, and I just learned everything. I remember putting the roof on this house myself. There was like a torch down roof that I'd seen some roofers do once. So I did the same thing. And it's like August, and I'm carrying rolls of roofing up and everything. Like I just took it all on myself. But the impetus for all that was what happened back in Daytona in March. So it's not a typical arc to jump from auto security into real estate, but that was my path.
Wow. I mean, it's super interesting. Not a story I expected. I certainly haven't heard it before. I'm a huge proponent of psychedelics for therapeutic reasons
Oh, interesting.
and for having epiphanies. It's a rabbit hole I've been going down personally, and I know it's about to become federally legal soon
Mm,
for therapeutic purposes. And I'm intrigued to hear that side of the story, and I might
mm.
infer that those were involved. So
Yeah, there was acid involved. I'll tell you blankly. And for
yeah,
many years, I didn't really share that story because people would cast an askance view of it.
right.
But now, considering my current situation, I think I've proven the merit of my actions. So all's well that ends well, right? I think there's a
Absolutely.
place for everything, and if you find a catalyst for action in some dark corner, if you do something with it, who cares, right?
Right.
Like if that's what it took to get you motivated and for you to find some purpose.
Well said. Well said. I'll
Mm,
let that just hang out there for a bit.
mm.
And I'll just quickly jump in and say to the listener out there, go follow my podcast. If you like to hear intriguing guests like Duke and these crazy stories that my podcast guests like to share, go on Spotify, go on Apple Podcasts, like and subscribe. Follow my podcast. You'll get notifications every Monday when I drop a new episode. And give me a 5-star review. It really helps me out. And don't forget about my real estate services. I am a listing specialist. Okay. Now back to Duke after that awesome story. And you touched on this already, but I don't want to get away from it. And I want to start by saying that I am not a handy person. I'm not Mr. Fix It. The best thing I do in construction, if I'm getting my hands dirty, is demo. I'm a good demo guy. You give me a sledgehammer, I'm going to smash the crap out of
Can
everything.
break some stuff.
Yeah, and I will work hard and haul everything to the curb. But and you implied this already, but you weren't a handyman. You didn't know squat about anything. You were going classes classes at Home Depot. Why on earth did you choose to do all the work yourself? And on that very first flip, and I think more, you did all the work yourself
Yeah.
instead of hiring somebody. Why did you make that decision?
It was just for too long I did it that way. I had a friend, I still have a friend named Ryan Rare, and we were childhood buddies, and he's legally blind. So
Hmm.
I don't mean like he can't, get around, and so he can see, but like not well enough to get a driver's license, for
Right.
example. Okay. So we're friends, and many people that would be a handicap, and they would sit at home with their Pokemon cards or whatever. But like Ryan, like sucks the marrow out of life. Like everything he got into, all of us would get into. He's into mountain biking. We're doing it. He gets into RC cars. We all like rally. We're like, let's do this. This is awesome. He would race motocross. Go flying through the air like on a motocross, like indestructible. and in his like attitude of just doing everything and trying it, we also worked on a lot of stuff, so I'd have a go-kart and I'd be like, we don't have an instruction book. He's like, instruction book? Are you fucking mad? Look at that guy's butt crack hanging out over there. That's the go-kart mechanic. He doesn't know anything. He just turns screws until he makes it work. Let's do it. So we would jump in and do stuff. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. And we would take our bikes apart and put them back together. And so that kind of just dive in and do it attitude that Ryan instilled in me is what I carried over into the houses. So when I got into houses, like I did not really trust that if I just started calling people from the phone book, hey, I've got a house. Can you come over here and I don't know, like tear out all these rotten ceilings and fix it? Like I knew that'd be a dead end. That would be a one and done flip. You would
Right.
get taken advantage of. You would be overcharged. And plus, I was like, that's a rotten ceiling. Behind it is some wood. Let's get to it. So we would break it down, just like you said, like start with demo.
Sure.
We can do that, right? And then after that, we'll figure out what's up. You go to the store and you look at the insulation. You ask the guy, how does this go in? And he tells you a few tips, and it builds from there. So the confidence that was instilled by Ryan helped out. And then just the fact that at that time, like the motivation was so high, like I knew I had to do this. I had lots of energy. I would go install car alarms. And then when customers weren't booking me for the alarms, I'd be at the flip working on the flip.
Wow.
So that filled my day up.
Yeah.
Um, Similarly, I'm at a different stage in my life now where I'm segueing between two sort of like career directions, and I'm filling up my time with this new pursuit. And in these times in your life, in these transitory times when you're treading new ground and learning new things, you have to be very strong because you're pushing yourself into uncharted territory. And so your mental has to be strong. And once you've succeeded at something and you know how to do it and it's become rote, yeah, you can do it all day long. You just push the buttons and you go through the process. And many of us get comfortable in that plateau. And that's fine. That's fine. It's a life, it's a career. But if you really want to see what you're made of, put some new stuff in front of you where only you are the driving engine of it, and then see how you perform. And it's not a fail if you don't, but it's just an exercise.
Right. Well,
You're
it's a
obviously
learning.
trying to
It's a learning
push yourself,
experience. Yeah.
learn. Yeah, you can learn. And especially nowadays, my goodness, the tools we've got something within arm's reach of, I'm holding up a phone right now. This thing within arm's reach of us, you can educate yourself about anything you want to in minutes
Yeah.
and start getting a rudimentary understanding of it. It's incredible. Or you can find someone that knows how to do it professionally. The tools we have are ridiculous. There's almost no excuses nowadays if you have the motivation.
You're right. You're right. I love the faith you had in yourself, and I love the inspirational words that might help somebody out there choose themselves in a moment of either crisis or just a moment of, hey, I want to try something new. I want to go down this rabbit hole. Um, I love that. And it's kind of a good segue into my next question or my next topic.
Hmm.
You were the doer, doing everything, the entrepreneur, getting your hands dirty, learning it all on the fly. And then comes zombie house flippers. Zombie house flippers, to the best of my knowledge, has 6 seasons. It's still running on A&E. It's basically just quickly, it's a show about a group of professional home flippers. They go and rehab homes, and it follows them from the process of acquiring the property through the rehab and then selling the property, and of course, making a tidy profit.
We
What?
use the word professional flippers very loosely too, by the way.
Well, that's part of the shtick of the show, I
Yeah,
imagine.
how unprofessional we are.
But just
Yeah.
briefly, dude, how did you get involved in that show, and how did it start?
So it was funny. So I was happily flipping homes. This is in say 2014, and these are kind of like heydays for flipping.
Right.
We had come up, and confidence was now, uh, there that we had gotten past the worst of the downturn, but it was
Right.
still like shooting fish in a barrel to find flips. I
Right. You
mean, you
surprised
could
the
just
real estate. Let me jump in. You surprised the real estate.
yes.
You survived the real estate crash of 2008. And what a lot of people may not know is around probably 2010, a lot of short sales started coming on the market, and a lot of people were defaulting on mortgages. And there was a good 5 to maybe even 8, 9 year period where if you had the funds to acquire property, you could do it easily and on the cheap without competition. And if you were a home flipper at that time, you were high in the hog. Did I get that right?
Oh, stop telling me about those days. Oh my God. Man, if I knew then what I know now. But
Right,
again, it was like if you had the access to the capital, because it
right.
wasn't quite as easy to get the money. But yes, you could go out all throughout the area that I live in, which is 32806, and you could find 50 to $100,000 homes that all have like a 10x on that number right now.
Yeah.
So it was a free for all, and so I was happily flipping in this environment. And my friend Keith Ori, who I had met because I went to buy a file cabinet off of Craigslist from him. That's how we got introduced. He knew Justin Stamper, our buddy, the good-looking guy there on the show with the beard, and he knew Ashley Casserly, who is our friend, who's the lady on the show. So we were loosely affiliated, but we were not a flipping team together at that time. And what had happened was a scouting like agent from Hollywood had called Ashley because she had like a I sell cheap homes website. And so they call her up and, hey, we're casting for a reality show. When we see you, she's like, oh, okay, yeah, 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 thanks, bye. Hangs up because she figures it's some like scheme, like
Yeah.
talent scout, give us money and we'll blah, 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 blah. They persist and they contact her again. They're like, no, no, listen, we were really looking for a team of flippers. We see you're in Orlando and you flip or you have these houses, maybe the guys flip them we could talk to. And she's like, okay, okay. So they put us together with this outfit from Pilgrim Media. So Pilgrim has shot shows like Deadliest Catch and Mike Rowe's Dirty Jobs and stuff. So they have some credentials.
No kidding.
And yeah, they come out and they send their person out, and we're like, oh my God, like Hollywood is coming to talk to us, dude. And they wanted to film like a film with us for a day. They make what they call a sizzle reel, basically make a trailer about our show so they can then pitch it to the networks and stuff. And so they follow us around, and we like rented a vintage car or they set it up or something. And we're like trolling around with the top down in this Chevelle, and they're going to our jobs and filming. And then they take us out to dinner, and we're like, we're Hollywood. Like we order like everything, like fancy
Right.
bottle of wine. As it turned out, like the 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 bill wound up coming out of like the guy who took us out's own personal account because
Ah,
Pilgrim Media gave him like $200 to take us out or something.
right.
But we didn't know all this. We're like, this is crazy. And we knew it was a very slim chance of being selected for a show, but we were going to enjoy this moment. And so we did so, and they like wrapped up everything and said, we'll be in touch. And they left. We didn't hear from them for months. We'd
Yeah.
send an email. They'd be like, oh, yeah, yeah, we'll let you know. And Keith sends another email because he's very good with the keyboard. And they'd be like, yeah, we're, let you know. So we figured, well, we had like a 5% chance. Maybe that was pretty cool, guys. Like, who gets that chance, right? And then they called us and they were like, hey, we're sending the contract over. Have your lawyer review it. And we'd like to start filming in 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
It was just
Wow.
like that. So we didn't go soliciting it. They found us. And we signed up. So we started flipping houses and we thought they were just going to watch us flip. Like they're just going to be in the background, like watching what we do. And I assured them they would be very bored because my flips run smoothly and
Right.
there's no drama.
Right.
And they said, don't worry, we'll take care of that. And they did. They brought drama. So if you've ever seen an alligator in the swimming pool on a job site, if you've ever seen Keith driving through a house with his truck, if you've ever seen a wall collapsing because I lean on it, all these things were drama that they brought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, peek behind the curtain of the reality TV show scene, right? A lot of that stuff is contrived.
Everything that you see on TV is not quite what you see or what
Right.
you expect to see. And I like having seen it from both sides. It's a little bit difficult because now I watch a movie and I'm like, man, they had to shoot that like 10 different times to get that. Because if they're shooting you talking and then they shoot you from over your shoulder,
Right.
you had to do that conversation twice because you don't see a camera there both times. And so it's interesting to have a working understanding of that, which I'll get to later. Actually, that's proven useful for the documentary that I'm filming. We filmed in November for
Right.
the Ukraine effort. It's good to
Right.
have that kind of knowledge. But we did this. We learned a lot. We had fun. We got paid. We did this for 4 seasons and like into a fifth. And then they adopted a tactic of like diversifying like to other casts. So
Right.
they have one in Dallas. They have one filming in Tampa there now. And that's good because, after a time, there's a season for everything. And we wanted to move on to other pursuits in life. So,
Well, that's a great segue, which is going to get me into my next topic of discussion with you. But before I get there, I just want to reemphasize with the listener that the reason I provide this free content, one of the reasons I provide this free content, other than just helping, because I love to help, is again in hopes that you will think of me when it's time to make your real estate decision. Find me online at _ Phil Kruse. That's Kruse with a K. Google my name, Kruse. Follow with the words real estate. You're going to find me, and like and subscribe to my podcast. I really appreciate it. Now, Peter, Duke,
Same,
you
same.
you already said you wanted to transition out of really the home flipping industry, that path of being a TV star, so to speak, and
I'm
you
shaking my head. I know we're on radio, but I'm shaking my head, guys. No
right.
TV stars here.
Right. You
Mm.
created a company called Hourglass Homes. For the listener out there that doesn't know, maybe this is their first exposure to my podcast. I have an entire podcast episode devoted to the Hourglass District. It's essentially the northern part of the 32806 zip code, with downtown Hourglass District being essentially Curry Ford West. Why, and you mentioned that you're, kind of from the 32806 area. Why did you choose to name your next venture, your home build company, after the Hourglass District?
Well, I came by it honestly. I'm actually looking at Lake Hourglass right now from my desk. So I live on the edge of the lake, which is nice. I was blessed to find a nice piece of land that nature was very generous with, and I built my home here, our home in 2018. So that's good. That was around the time that I founded the company, and I just was all the homes that I'd flipped and so on. I've always run a very lean, streamlined operation. So it was never my goal to have like a bunch of employees and a bunch of equipment and scale very huge. In fact, my mantra has always been less, less, less. Like I want to have a very streamlined life that allows for freedom and fewer responsibilities.
That's right.
But just in the interest of just branding and feeling like I built this business in a professional fashion, I thought Hourglass Homes was appropriate. And so most of the stuff I do is very close to this 32806 area, of course, because I've been fortunate enough to find jobs nearby, and who wants to drive to work,
Right.
so it's all been very close here. So yeah, I've renovated a bunch of homes in this area. Many of those have been on the TV show, and I've been fortunate enough to find a little pocket where there were strong enough comps to support new builds, and ample supply of lots that were low enough priced for the economics to work for the new builds. I've never built like just a tract home, very basic, builder grade stuff. Every one I've done has been a project that I was very proud of. And some of these came out way nicer than they ever really deserved to, because I'd have just lots of time and inspiration to make them super nice. But they always sold for just like, like the reasonable market allowed price, So each one of the homes I've done has a plaque on the front, like a green acrylic plaque that's been etched, with the Hourglass Homes logo and stuff. And so it's nice to think that maybe one day people will look at those homes and be like, oh yeah, I remember this the guy, what's his name? I don't know. He built these homes. This is really, really nice. And I think that every one of those homes has been done with a care and an attention to detail that's, far above what's typical.
I can absolutely attest to that. I've toured a number of your homes. I've had buyers interested. I've been to your personal residence, and I could tell anyone out there listening that hasn't had the luxury of walking into one of Duke's homes that they are a joy. They're an artistic marvel. Lots of bold color choices, lots of bold hardware and lighting choices, great modern roof lines and exterior colors. And it's always just so interesting to walk in and be inspired, frankly, by your design choices.
Mm.
You've done a great job with Hourglass Homes. And you touched on this already, and it kind of comes across with just your energy and how you speak about your life experience. But I'm going to ask what might be a tough question, but
Mm.
I'm someone who has an urge to give back. Later today, I'm going to be doing my mentoring at the New Image Youth Center, and I'm just someone who just constantly wants to give back to the community, and I'm a huge Orlando advocate. What do you want your legacy to be, Duke, here in Orlando, for when people think about your real estate career? What are they going to think of when they think of Duke?
I don't think anything in my real estate career will be my defining legacy, to tell you the truth. I mean,
Right.
all of this stuff is well and good. I did it, to provide for myself and my family. I did it in a fashion that was satisfying to me. And the reason I'm speaking of it in past tense is because most of these builds I've done are behind me. I think I've hung up my hammer from building. The last three were over on Triangle Avenue. Two of those are on the market, folks. If you're interested and you're timely enough, you could look at 1636 or 1642 Triangle Avenue. They're
Right.
there on the little lake. But all these builds, I'll tell you a secret. I was a little bit cringy when you were describing the builds and how nice they are. And for a Virgo like myself, like I try and not let perfect be the enemy of good. But many of the builds to me are like a list of coulda, woulda, shouldas. And so I really
Right.
don't want my legacy to be any of these things that I felt was not perfect enough. It's just something about the creative stuff. Like it's subjective, right? And it can never be perfect enough in my eyes. There's always a way to fine tune it and make it better. So I don't think my legacy will be anything with the real estate. But what I would like is to do some stuff that will matter in the end. And I think that in that career segue that I did, which was going from the building of the homes, which in the way I was doing it was very labor intensive, very attention intensive. I always had to be present to make sure that things were done the way I hoped. Um,
Right.
into land development. Now, land development is much more objective. You either check all the boxes or you go back and check all the boxes. If you've found a parcel and you've correctly defined its highest and best, you go through and do all the paperwork to make it sellable, and that's your job. And to me, that's a much more black and white operation. So, in doing that and in having the extra time that allows for, I've created a space in my life. Into that space comes the Ukraine project. And the Ukrainian project is being supportive of various fundraising and humanitarian endeavors to ease the trouble which is befallen the Ukrainian people at this time. So I hope that one day that'll be one of the defining characteristics of my legacy.
Right.
But although it's nice to think people can look back and see something tangible, a pile of bricks and sticks, a home or something like that, I don't think that's what that I'd want to be remembered for.
Sure. Well, again,
Mm,
it's just a function of your, or it goes back to your humble nature,
mm,
kind of pushing off the fact that you've created so many hundreds really of amazing homes that people are going to live in, certainly for the rest of our lifetime and generations beyond. And those little
mm.
placards that say Hourglass Homes are going to persist. So I think your legacy in Orlando and the Hourglass district is solidified. And you've teased your Ukraine philanthropic ventures. Let me just
Mm.
tell the listener out there quickly what Duke is doing for the Ukrainian people and with some of his resources and connections is extremely inspiring. And frankly, it is an entire episode's worth of content. And I want to devote a future episode, Duke, if you're okay with that, to just discuss what you got going on in Ukraine. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think that'd be good. It's a very timely topic. It's a shame that it's become politicized, but I'd like people to see it more in the black and white human issue that it is.
Great. Well, I look forward to that day. I'll get you on the books again here in the next few weeks. And I just want to tie a bow around this conversation. So inspired by you, by hearing the stories of your life, your mindset. This is just such a lesson in mindset. If you focus on what you want, if you're willing to do the work yourself, if you're willing to grow, if you're willing to be humble, if you're willing to treat people with love and respect, if you're willing to find people that can support you if you don't know what you're doing, people that you trust that are in your network, you are going to be successful, regardless of if you go to college or not, or whatever path you end up taking. Know that out there, if you're listening, people like Duke exist and use them as a shining example of what you can achieve if you put your mind to it. So,
Hey, I
Duke,
look up to you, Phil. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
please.
I don't know if I'm particularly the mentor for everyone to look to, but you've been an inspiration to me. And the more I learn about you and the stuff you're involved in and things you invest your time in, it humbles me. I like to have friends that I look up to.
Well, I appreciate that, Duke, and that means a ton because the feeling's totally mutual, and you know, I'm hoping that we continue to grow our friendship. With that said, just Duke, thank you very much for your time. And where can people find out more about you if they want to find out more about you?
I mean, I don't know if I necessarily put my best face forward, but you can see some hijinks on the Instagram account. Some of it's, you know, personal stuff, some of it's house stuff. There's a series right now called From Frame to Finished that I'm putting out, which is like 18 little mini episodes about design and building of your home. So check it out. It's Duke Bravo on Instagram.
So at Duke Bravo, and then Peter, just if you have a link to that 18 episode miniseries, send it to me. I'll post Peter's Instagram handle,
Mm.
Hourglass Homes website, just so you could see it, even though Peter or Duke is not really pursuing that anymore. I'll put that all in my episode description, and it's going to be right there by my contact information, my direct cell phone number. If you want to figure out how to contact Duke by going through me, that's fine. And of course, contact me for any real estate questions. I'm here to help. No question is too small. Find me on social media at _ Phil Kruse. That's Kruse with a K. Follow my podcast. Share the link. This is huge. Copy the link, text it to a friend if you want them to hear this interview or any of my other content, or even better, post it on your social media. That would be massive. And always know your best life in Orlando is within reach. Keep embracing every moment. Cheers.
Absolutely.
And thanks to you, Duke. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Phil. This has been great. It's nice talking with you.
Cheers, man.